Hey guys, Dr. Justin Marchegiani here. Today we're going to be talking about mold and mycotoxins and are they causing you to be tired and fatigued? We'll dive into the underlying physiology and what's happening underneath the hood. Before we do, please smash that like button. It really helps the search algorithm, and love to see your comments down below and what your thoughts are on the topic. All right, so let's dive in here tonight. So a couple things out of the gate. Is mold making you tired? That's going to be the big topic of conversation. We're going to go into mycotoxin production. What's driving that? We're going to talk about how it can disrupt the mitochondria. We're going to talk about inflammatory response, the inflammation, and how that can also make you tired. We're going to talk about the chronic inflammatory response syndrome, as well as immune system overdrive. These are going to be the big topics of conversation tonight. So really excited to dive in. Okay, so first off, is mold making you tired? So yeah, there's definitely a correlation with mold making you tired. Again, we're going to talk about different types of mold, whether it's different black mold like Stachybotrys, different Aspergillus, Penicillium species. These molds are typically going to be caused by water damage, especially inside water damage. Again, mold outside from decaying plant matter is a little bit different. You have ventilation, you have the open air. When you're confined inside, especially with drywall, insulation, hardwoods, water coming in chronically behind walls, coming in through leaks in the basement, leaks in the roof. And if this water stays more than a couple days, especially with this kind of material, you're going to potentially grow mold, right? You need three things to grow mold. You need oxygen. That's pretty much a given unless you're in space or some kind of a sealed off environment. You need carbohydrate, some kind of a fuel source. This can be dust. This can be drywall. This can be wood. This can be insulation. And we have oxygen, we have carbohydrate, right? And then we have moisture, water. So we have water, moisture, carbohydrate being the drywall or the dust. So these are the big three vectors that you need to actually grow mold. And so first thing first is prevention. You want to really get your environment dry. So make sure there's no chronic leaks happening. You can get a moisture meter, moisture detector, and see what's happening. Look at walls. If you're, in doubt, you can get an infrared meter to look at heat variation. That's a good way to look at it. And then if there's not a leak, most people are aware of leaks because over time it's going to be very apparent with stains on the wall, drywall, paint bubbling up. You're going to know over time, right, if there's an actual leak. Most of the time it's going to be the subtle high humidity in the house that's going to be problematic, and then not having an air filter. High humidity, there's your water source, and then you have dust. There's going to be your carbohydrate just in the air, right? And then you have, of course, the oxygen. There's your mold. You could have chronic low levels of mold just due to high humidity and then having dust. So having good air filtration decreases the amount of dust, and then decreasing the mold or the humidity via a dehumidifier is also going to be vitally helpful. So air filtration, dehumidification is going to make your air quality so much better, and you'll feel more comfortable in your house too. So mycotoxins are essentially the farts of the mold. So you have mold, whether it's Aspergillus, Penicillium. These can produce 300 plus mycotoxins. So when we're talking mold, most of the time we're talking the off-gassing of these molds called mycotoxins that are really going to be problematic. And they can increase fatigue. They can put lots of stress on the body systems, whether it's thyroid. There's articles where you can find thyroid hormone decreasing, low T4, low T3, especially low T4, low T3 conversion. You can see increase in reverse T3, all due to mold mycotoxins. It can disrupt the mitochondria. I'll go through a scientific article on what's happening, whether it's reactive oxygen species, whether it's decreasing fatty acid oxidation, decreasing apoptosis. It puts a lot of stress on the mitochondrial pathways. And in the end, you're going to end up with less ATP, adenosine triphosphate, which is the cellular currency that your body needs to generate energy. Very important. Inflammation, like the more inflamed we are, the more we activate our immune system, the more tired we're going to be, right? The chronic inflammation is going to drive adrenal stimulation. That's going to cause cortisol issues. So the more cortisol we have, it's going to take away our ability to use cortisol for energy. Now we're going to be using it for anti-inflammatory purposes because we're chronically inflamed. Again, we're going to have less resources for our hormones. So when we're chronically stressed or inflamed, typically we shift away from anabolic metabolism because we need progesterone as a female. Well, that can go and pinch hit for cortisol, or if we're chronically stressed, our body's going to allocate resources away from anabolic hormones and put them towards catabolic hormones, catabolic being our cortisol and our breakdown hormones. So you'll have less DHEA sulfate from the adrenals, which is a anabolic build you up hormone, and you're going to have less testosterone, and as a female, you'll have less progesterone as well. And again, chronic inflammation is going to lead to chronic inflammatory response syndrome. Let me just pull away my image here for a sec so you guys can see better. So this is going to be prolonged mold exposure can lead to CIRS, chronic inflammatory response syndrome, a condition strongly associated with chronic fatigue and other symptoms. So essentially, the more stressed your immune system is, the more chronically inflamed you become, it's going to knock down your mitochondria, it's going to knock down your adrenals, it's going to knock down your thyroid, it's going to knock down your female hormones. Now, with all of these things impaired, now you may hit that criteria of a chronic inflammatory response syndrome patient. Now, again, the problem I don't like about these diagnoses, it doesn't tell you what the underlying root issue is. It's just taking a lot of symptoms and it's saying, okay, you fit into this category of symptoms, therefore we're going to give you this label. But the problem is, what's the solution? So I only like diagnoses if it's helpful to tell you about what the solution is, right? So, oh, this diagnosis, like you have a bacterial infection. Okay, great. We can at least prescribe something to knock down the bacteria. Now, in my world, we try to use more natural compounds first. Or, oh, if you have a bacterial infection, well, how did you get it? Is it an acute issue, like you got a cold from your kid and you got a staph or strep? Or do you just have a compromised immune system, poor gut health, and that's why you're immunocompromised, and now you got it? So then you have to that begs the next question, well, how did that happen to begin with? And so you always want to look a little bit deeper. So I like diagnoses that tell you about the root cause. And then immune system overdrive, right? This is continuous mold exposure. Can cause the immune system to be in a constant state of alert, leading to overproduction of immune cells. Now you have interleukin cytokines. Your CD57 may be chronically low now. Again, this is going to cause lots of fatigue because the more your immune system is revved up, the more your immune response is revved up, it's going to allocate resources from your adrenals to deal with stress. It's going to lower your DHEA. It's going to lower your progesterone if you're a female, potentially even decrease estrogen. Again, mold is slightly estrogenic, so you could potentially start to have perimenopausal, menopausal symptoms like hot flashes as a woman. You may gain more fat because if it's estrogenic, you may put on more fat cells, and fat cells produce their own exocrine type of hormone. So you get more estrogen from your fat cells. So the fatter you get, the more estrogen, which drives the more fat. So it's kind of like a vicious cycle. So you got to get to the root cause of a lot of these things. You got to look at it holistically and say, well, why is this happening? So we can actually get to the root cause of it. So mycotoxins, mitochondrial disruption, inflammation, chronic inflammatory response syndrome, and then immune overdrive. Again, all these things are going to impact your adrenals, impact your thyroid, etc. Let me pull this up here with you guys. Okay, let's pull up this article real fast if we can. All right, so this is a really interesting abstract here. I'm going to zoom in a little more so you guys can see. All right, so a couple things here. Your mitochondria are the powerhouse of your cells that could lead to several diseases. This is an interesting article on mycotoxins, assisted mitochondrial dysfunction, and cytotoxicity. And they're talking about using mycotoxins to actually kill cancer cells because mycotoxin impacts regular cells, healthy cells. It also impacts cancer cells. So we're looking at it not to use it to knock down cancer, but we're just using it to understand how mycotoxins can negatively impact healthy cells in the body. And so we know that it can essentially, it's the powerhouse of your cell is the mitochondria. Mycotoxins are the secondary metabolites from fungus. This is like where I talked about kind of the farts of mold, are capable of causing disease in humans. Okay, really important out of the gate. Finding source of mycotoxins such as citrinin, aflatoxin, T2 exotoxins, in system causing mitochondrial dysfunction. Mycotoxins can induce oxidative stress even at low concentration doses that can be one of the major causes of mitochondrial function. They're going to negatively impact your mitochondria. They can cause apoptotic, which basically means programmed cell death. So it can decrease or increase your cells dying. Again, this article, they're talking about using it to induce toxic death of cancer cells. We're talking about it as a chemotherapy. We're talking about it of how just it can negatively impact healthy cells. That's important to think about. So these are some different mycotoxins here that you can think about. Aflatoxin, these are some big ones. Citrinin, gliotoxin, zearalenone, ochratoxin A. So we'll measure some of these mycotoxins. We'll do urinary challenge tests where we'll look at the mycotoxins level in your urine. Now, you can't do these tests without doing some kind of a challenge because we may not be able to see the mycotoxins in your urine if your detoxification is poor. So we may do glutathione and NAC for a week or so. We may we do some sauna therapy. I don't recommend doing binders because that would pull the mycotoxins out in your stool and you may not see it in the urine for testing purposes, just FYI in that front. So these are some different mycotoxins that we may see. A lot of them will come from Aspergillus and Penicillium species. Again, you can have 300 different mycotoxins from Aspergillus and from Penicillium. So good article right here. So this talks about how reactive oxygen species can occur. These are basically oxidative stressors from the mold toxins. And this can cause DNA mutation, and these can cause all different kinds of issues with aging because it's going to decrease ATP. So most of how the mold is going to impact you, it's going to decrease ATP. Then it talks about all these other conditions that could happen as a result downstream. But what we're looking at is decrease in ATP. One other image that's really good here that I liked. This talks about aflatoxin impacting hepatic function, impacting electron transport chain 1 through 4. So the electron transport chain is vitally important for generating ATP. About 32, 33 ATP units come from the electron transport chain complexes 1 through 4. The citrulline, it's going to impact transmembrane potential. So we need healthy membrane. We need membranes to work, and they have to essentially depolarize and repolarize so action potential and nerves can work. Again, this is going to impact calcium influx because you need calcium to bring that cell up to more positive levels so your nerves can contract. So you can just see increase in oxidative stress from deoxynivalenol. You're going to see more mitochondrial function. You're going to see increased reactogen species, depletion of mitochondrial membrane potential, increased release cytochrome C. So a lot of different things here. One article I wanted to pull up here. Okay, cool. This is really cool here. So you can see here out of the gates, this kind of image looks at a lot of the major mechanisms. You're going to see an increase in autophagy. You're going to see mitochondrial damage. You're going to see necrosis. You're going to see apoptosis happening, programmed cell death. This is going to be decreasing mitochondrial quality, decreasing beta oxidation, so burning fat less efficiently, increase in reactive oxygen species, less ATP. So it's negatively impacting the cell, apoptosis, more programmed cell death of the mitochondria, increase in necrosis. That means the cell is dying. So really important to look at that. And again, this does more than just impact the mitochondria, right? This is going to have impact with your adrenals, with your gut function. Because a lot of times with chronic mold, you can start to have colonization of mold in your gut. We may run organic acid tests that look at and show different levels of Aspergillus, Firmicutes, or not Firmicutes, Fusarium, Aspergillus, Penicillium, mold species in the gut. With an O test, we may see some chronic inoculation of some of these mold in the gut. And so this could be a big thing because now you're a mold factory in your gut producing these things because you have this colonization problem. Well, that's a problem because now you start to have negative bacterial imbalances. Now you're producing a lot more histamine because your gut bacteria is off. Now that histamine from the mold, from the gut bacteria, that can make you more histamine sensitive. Now, it's really important when you have all these chronic mold issues, chronic health issues, now your immune system is on high alert because you have a SIRS type of issue. Now you have this chronically high immune system, which you could be reacting to everything, food, stress, the whole 9 yards. So now you have to do things to really calm down that amygdala brainstem response because you are in total fight or flight. And we have to really decrease that, especially if you're super sensitive to food, you can't digest anything. That's going to set you up for a really tough time to take a next step in a functional medicine program. May have to look at thyroid, may have to look at immune system markers like TPO and thyroglobulin. May have to look at ANA as well, anti-nuclear antibodies. The adrenals need to be looked at as well as female hormones, and then definitely the gut. These are all going to be important vectors to look at. But when we look at how the mitochondria gets damaged, we see necrosis, we see apoptosis, we see impacting of calcium and the cell being able to depolarize and repolarize, which is how the cell sends action potential and communicates and works. It's going to inhibit of mitochondrial enzymes. It's going to have decreased control over the mitochondria, less ATP, less beta fatty acid oxidation. And we're also going to see less ATP, and then we're going to see more oxidative stress. Oxidation, think if you cut the apple on the kitchen table, you leave it open, it starts to brown, that's oxidation. Now we can put in things like vitamin C to prevent that from oxidizing, squeeze some lemon or lime juice on that apple, it'll prevent it, right? But this is what's happening inside your mitochondria. You have this oxidation type of rusting effect happening. So if you want to look deeper, again, I'll put a link down below where my for my staff here, if you want to dive in and reach out on the functional medicine side and get functional medicine support worldwide, that'll be an option for you to reach out to my team down below. But if you have any questions, feel free to connect, put the comments there. I'd love to see what you're thinking about the topic. And if you're having chronic fatigue issues and you think there could be a mold implication, don't hesitate. Definitely get things looked at and tested. But again, you have your acute issues where you have an actual leak in the roof, the foundation, burst water pipe, crack in the window, however that water's coming in, get it resolved, get it remediated fast, do it with a professional. Make sure you have good air filtration, make sure you have good dehumidification, and get your mold levels in your house tested. You can do an ERMI, you can do a plate test, but get your levels tested, get a good baseline, and then remediate, holistically. There's other podcasts, we'll put some down here or there, other podcast videos and interviews we've done on the topic of mold, so take a look at those recommended videos at the end of the video here today. All right, guys, link down below for coordinates to reach out if you need more support. Take care. Bye.